Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desatarini Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna and welcome all the devotees to the level 2 Bhagavadgita classes from ISKCON Mangaluru. So yesterday we concluded chapter 4. Yeah. So and I think we went through a lot of important sections in chapter 4. So because that was Jnana Yoga, right? So wherein yesterday mostly if we'll have to summarize in a capsule, so we saw that what is the work which we can do or the types of karma we have, right? So we all have to work and then the types of karma. So we have seen, right? And so different categories are akarma, vikarma and karma, right? Can anyone tell what is the difference? What is karma, what is akarma and what is vikarma?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guruji.
Vikarma, uh, Vikarma is the completely uh, uh, work done for nothing, any either materialistic or either spiritual. It is done Vikarma. And Akarma is the Sakarma is the work done for materialistic society. And Akarma is the work by which we always done for spirituality, means the work done for God, for Krishna.
Yep. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So basically, what is karma? Karma are the activities which are prescribed. Those are the prescribed duties are karma. Yeah. So, and vikarma is opposite of it. So things which are prohibited, right? And then, so what is akarma? So akarma is things in conjunction with this spiritual thing, right? So wherein, so you actually offer it as a devotional service, right? So you dovetail it into spirituality. So that's called akarma. So wherein you will not incur any sins. Or okay. And then so we went through other sections also, and the other important section was who can actually give us this knowledge, right? This jnana. So this jnana has to be obtained from a spiritual master, right? Who has a realized soul, right? And then so we can render services and then we can ask, right? So we can ask for our questions related to spirituality and then we can progress in the path of jnana. Okay, so this was about jnana. So now again Arjuna in this chapter, right, he gets confused. Okay, so now he says that third chapter you said to work and then now you're saying to renounce, right? To basically jnana, right? So you have told about jnana. So now Arjuna is asking, what is it? So again he asks, which is better, right? So shall I renounce? Okay. So he's again asks whether renouncing work is superior or to work with detachment. Okay. So he's again asking a question. Okay. So basically here two things, right? So because he actually is referring to sannyasa, right? So he's asking, what is this? Yeah. So in this case, right? So what Krishna says is this karma sannyasa, right? So sannyasa is nothing but karma sannyasa. Okay. And the karma yoga. So we'll go through the karma yoga also. So karma yoga is nothing but performing our activities by detachment from the results. Yeah? So that is nothing but, if at all in this chapter wherever we hit with karma yoga, it is nothing but the nishkama karma yoga. So wherein we'll actually work, but we'll be detached from the results. Yeah? And the other one, karma sannyasa, is nothing but giving up the work. Okay, so completely giving up the work. So that is what actually Arjuna thought. So do I have to completely give up my work? Yeah. So and then he asks this question. Okay. So which is superior? Okay, and then we'll see through that the Lord actually answers that in different ways, right? So he actually says that both have the same goal, because end goal is the same, but he'll emphasize on to work with detachment, because that is easier and superior. Okay, and then he'll actually take into how to perform nishkam karma yoga, right? So after this, then he'll actually take to the next level. So wherein he'll say that what is the platform of knowledge, right? He'll actually take the three doers. Okay, so Jiva, Prakriti, and Paramatma. And then say he'll actually focus on the Ashtanga Yoga, right? And at last, he'll give the peace formula. Okay, so what is the peace formula to attain liberation? Okay, so that's at the last verse. Okay, so it's a very important verse, right? So that we'll see in the next class. Okay, so now the question is, which is better, work or renunciation, right? But the thing which actually Arjuna is missing here is, so Krishna says that you'll have to work, but you'll have to renounce the result of the work, right? You should not get detached. You should not get attached to it. Okay. So that is what Krishna told. So Krishna says that you'll have to perform your work, but with a renounced order. So in the sense, you should not actually look for the results. That should be renounced. Okay. So that's the theme which goes into this chapter. So which actually Arjuna was thinking that, okay, so I can actually skip this. Yeah. So these are something, okay, this is what we covered, right? In a nutshell, we covered all these things. Yeah. Yeah. So which is easier? So here, yeah, these are the different sections. Yeah. So which we just touched. Arjuna again asks question whether renouncing work is superior to work with detachment. Krishna replies, both are equal in the sense that both are means to the same goal. Right? Emphasizes working with detachment as easier. So from 5.1 verse to 5.6. Okay, this is the discussion which goes through. Okay. So here Arjuna asks, Arjuna vacha sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samsayai yakshreyayetyor ekam tanme bruhishu nishchitam. So he's asking. So now he's asking the Lord, saying that, tell me, say, renouncing the work, right? So he says that sannyasam, renunciation, karmanam, of all activities, right? So he's asking, and then again you recommended, he says that again you recommended work with devotion, right? So now you kindly tell me definitely which of this is more beneficial. Okay, so he's asking, you asked me to renounce work and then you again recommended to work with devotion. Okay, so he's asking which is more beneficial. Okay, so again this is the same perplexity which Arjuna has in, and then she is actually giving us a chance, right, again to understand, right? So in here, right, Arjuna actually understands that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation of all activities. So he says that we give up all kinds of activities. So that is what his um, side of the story is. Okay. So here it goes, right? Arjuna asks which is better and more beneficial, work or renunciation. Okay. So actually in chapter 2, right? So these are all what was discussed in chapter 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. So I think we'll not cover in this. Basically, we'll focus here, right? So work in devotional service is better than dry speculation. So with the philosophical stuff, right? So that is very difficult. So compared to that, this is free, right? So work in devotion is actually transcendental and frees from one's reaction. Okay, easier than dry speculation. So with speculation, we can't understand things. Yeah. So these are few things, right? So here. So the same verses are being described, saying that this was in the third chapter, right? So wherein he said work, right? But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So this is for the elevated souls, yeah. So these things we covered, yeah. So we'll not go through much on that. Yeah. So this is the thing, right? So here again, Arjuna actually got bewildered, right? So what to do? And then he heard now Jnana again. So at the end, right? So in all the places, if you see, right, say Lord Krishna says that you'll have to fight, right? So basically, what is the mood of Niskama Karma Yogi, right? So I'll actually tell that. I believe that will make the session easier. Okay. So basically, what should be our identity when we are in Nishkam Karma Yogi stage, right? So first thing is, if somebody asks, right, so who are we, then we should actually be able to tell that we are the servants of the Lord, right? Basically, He is the master and we are the servants, right? And then what is the work which we do, right? If somebody asks what is the work you do, then we say that the work which is been allocated by the God, right? So then how do you do that work? With sincerity and dedication and to the best of my abilities. Okay. And what do you do with the results? So you don't keep it with yourself, because if you keep it with yourself, you'll get puffed up. We'll actually pass it to the God. Because nothing here, right, is ours. Okay. So if you take an example, right? So take the example of Hanuman, right? So if you ask any time, right, he'll say that he is the servant of the Lord, right? So Lord Rama. And then whatever work was being given, he used to work everything for Lord Rama, right? And then with utmost sincerity and dedication, right? So whenever there was a necessity, um, to actually show his anger, right? So even the anger which he showed in Lanka, right, it was for the good, right? And then he never takes the results onto him. Yeah. And the other thing is, we can even take the example of an small boy. Okay. So if it is the birthday of his father, right? And the boy actually brings the chocolate and then gives to the father, right? So the father would be happy, isn't it? Though the child is not earning. So that money is whose? His father's money, right? So he actually bought the chocolate with his father's money and then he's giving back to the father. But that makes the father happy, right? So similarly, whatever we are enjoying, right? Everything is God's creation and God's gift. So we are just utilizing it. And then we should be actually giving those results, or so we'll actually offer it to the Lord, saying that what else I can give you. So it's like we all know, right? So now Kumbh is going on, right? So everyone goes to Ganga, right? So what do they do? She can't offer anything to Ganga, right? Rather, we actually give our sins to her. Yeah. The only thing what we can offer is Ganga Jal. We only give Ganga Jal to her, saying that so we offer oblations to her, right? So and then say we actually pray her, and then say we actually take a dip, right? So in that way, so most of the time, what happens is due to this materialistic life and the conditioned soul, we being a conditioned soul, right? We forget all these things, and then so we are always entangled in me, mine, right? So that attitude has to be waved off. So then only, because we should not have the false ego and doership feeling. So if we have that, then we can't do the Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? And then because the moment we start taking the credits, right? So then that becomes a problem. Yeah. So actually, this is a right consciousness, right? All beings, all begins constantly making plans for the future. Okay, so thoughts manifest into actions, repeated actions into habits. Habits actually make up our character, and character determines our destiny. How to take steps in right direction is described in fifth chapter. Okay, so these are the things, yeah. So which actually showcases our destiny. There are steps leading to further entanglement in worldly complexities. There are steps leading to a life of liberation, tranquility. So whatever we discuss, right? So if you follow through them, right? So then she will be liberated. Yeah. So this is the same representation. So this is actually again. So why he is asking this question is basically to actually stress, to actually give us more information, right? Work for sense activity must be given up. Fighting for a kingdom, even with knowledge of the soul, seems like inactivity of the sense to me. Therefore, it should be given up. If one works with devotion, then how is work stopped? You speak in riddles, action, inaction, inaction. So, okay, these things we actually saw yesterday, right? So action, inaction, and so now he's asking, so which is better? Yeah. So now the Lord actually replies. Okay. So the personality of God had replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So he says that both are the end goal of both the things is the same. So one is a faster, easier way, and the other one is a painful way, right? So these are the differences. So why do we say? Because we saw in the previous chapters that controlling the senses is very difficult, right? So even we saw the example of the wind, right? So wherein if your boat is sailing, right? So if there is a strong wind, then it will actually carry away. Similarly, the senses are very strong. Anyone gets agitated, then actually controlling them is very difficult. Yeah. So basically, renunciation, right? This needs purification by prescribed duties, right? But so this is work in devotion, yeah. So this is renunciation. So this process itself purifies, okay, because you'll be actually following through the process, and then we saw the process also, right? And what are the 9 stages of bhakti, and then what are the 9 ways we can actually do bhakti, and then here jnana insufficient for liberation. Action is must, right? So because the soul is active, right? Must act in status of soul. So there is a risk of fall, or success is guaranteed. Yeah. So here, basically, why do the main reason is why do we do the renunciation? So even the sannyasas is basically to find out the root. So that is nothing but Lord Vishnu. So after going through all those renunciation, right? So you'll get to know the ultimate truth is Vishnu. So with devotional service, you're watering it, right? So here you'll get detached from the matter, so which is good, right? So, but the senses are very strong, wherein they'll drag you. If you detach those matter and then attach to Krishna, right? So it is very good, right? So here it takes many births. This quickly depends. It depends upon how much faith we have in, right? And then we know that the Lord also reciprocates. Tadvidhi pranipatena, right? And then they read Sankhya philosophy, and so for that, a lot of knowledge is required, right? So a lot of even Sanskrit and everything has to be read properly. So then only you can read those things. But here you can actually read Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So these are the main differences. Yeah. So we touch base those things. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Okay, so then who is the renounced person? Okay, so renounced person is one who is actually who is a true sannyasi, right? So who is not actually bewildered, right? So he neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage. Okay, because he's not attached to the result, right? So why should he actually have a problem? Say, for example, right? Prabhupada in his lecture, he's in many of the places he'll say that we don't have a problem to sleep under a tree. Okay, because being a sannyasi, right? He says that it doesn't matter whether we sleep under a tree or in an apartment, right? For them, both are same, right? So in the same way, so that's just an example, okay? So they are not. So that's the reason they are fearless, also, right? So because they are not expecting anything, it's whatever could be the outcome. It is they believe in Krishna's grace. So good or bad, if it is good, they actually route it to Krishna. If it is bad, then they feel that okay, something worst has to be happen, and then so we got only a little portion of it. Yeah. So that's the way. And the other thing is this renunciation, right? So renunciation are of two types. Okay. One is called this Falgu Vairagya, right? So to renounce things related to Supreme, okay, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them material, with desire for liberation. Yeah. So that is Falgu, so which is not real, right? And the other one, we even discussed that Yukta Vairagya, right? So we know that everything belongs to the Lord, and then we utilize it for the service of the Lord, right? And then we should, when we don't actually claim the proprietorship, so that is called Yukta Vairagya. Yeah? And if you look, another thing is called this Markata Vairagya is also a term which you will be listening. Okay. So what is it? Right? So Markata Vairagya is nothing but the monkeys, right? So if you look the monkeys, right? So they look very renounced, isn't it? You see, they don't have any clothes to wear, right? Everything, it looks to be very renounced, right? So, but if you see, it will be having a dozen girlfriends, right? So that's called, we should not do that. So it's not that we renounce, we actually dress up and then say we behave that we are renounced, but internally you have got all the material sense gratificatory feelings, right? So, and then if you act in that, right? So that's worse. Yeah. Okay. And then now, right? So we'll actually go to into the next shloka, right? So wherein this is fifth. Okay, we covered three. Yeah. So sannyasi, this is basically how one neither hates nor desires for the fruits, right? So this is more or less we covered, because they don't have any duality in mind, and then one becomes full in himself, so implies no hatred or lamentation. Yeah. Only the ignorance speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of material world. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieve the results of both. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be obtained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Okay. Because the aim is one, we saw, right? So the aim of both the things is to attain Vishnu. And then we saw the differences also, right? So basically, what is the aim of analytical study of the material world? To find the soul of existence, right? So, and the soul of material world is Lord Vishnu, right? So that's the thing. Anyhow, we discuss these things at a length, right? So we'll actually go to the next section. So wherein how do we perform this Nishkam Karma Yoga? Okay. So this we saw, right? So actually, if you look in, right, so this is how we'll have the Gyanis, right? Say actually they do a lot of austerities. They even go to the Himalayas, right? So wherein everything is frozen. And there they are actually sit in this without having any proper clothes and all, right? So they'll have bare minimum clothes, and then so they'll actually go through this pain, and then they want to control all the senses, right? And even they put fire around them, and then they sit in between when it's in the hot summer. Yes, it's not in the cold winter, so when you like to go and then actually have a bonfire. No. So it is basically, maybe you can think of a desert, and then having fire around it, right? So I think those are very difficult, so we'll see through them. Yeah. Yeah, this is what from the purport. In the first process, Sankhya, one has to become detached from matter, and in devotional yoga process, one has to attach himself to the work of Krishna consciousness. Factually, both processes are the same, although superficially, one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to be involvement, to involve attachment. Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. So unless you detach from the matter, you cannot attach to Krishna, right? So merely renouncing all activities yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. So we saw this, right? Because if we'll have to cook, and if, say, what happens? So if we actually renounce everything, right? So the thing is, you'll have to eat, right? So it's, you're restraining that, saying that I will not eat, right? So, but the thing is, you actually, your mind says that you want to have, you want to eat it, right? So there you can't restrain your senses, right? So, and you will not be happy because you'll be feeling hungry, and then you, okay, you'll actually forcefully, you'll be actually stopping that thought process because that is required for the body, right? Say unless, so you have achieved that stage wherein like Dhruva Maharaj, right? So Dhruva Maharaj actually was eating, he was actually rather drinking only water once in 3 days, right? So that's on high end of Ashtanga yoga he was doing, and then later on he actually was breathing, I think once in a week or so. So I think that's a different thing, yeah. So apart from that, right? So natural tendency is to actually, when we are living in this material world, right, to accept things, right? So which are actually sanctioned, right? So to maintain this body, right? So anything extra you're doing other than maintaining this body is sense gratification, right? So for maintaining the body, you need food. So if if it's in the devotional way, right? So you actually offer it to the Lord and then you take it, right? So in that way, right? So you'll have to renounce, but you'll have to engage in the devotional service also, right? So this is how do we perform Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? And then, so before this, right, I'll just tell you the story of King Mriga. Okay. So because most of us might be thinking that, so about these things, right? So what should be done and what should not be done, right? And the other thing is the karma also, right? So most of the time, majority of us actually think of like doing good to someone, right? But at times it backfires, right? So hope everyone might have experience in one place or the other, right? So we actually tend to do something good for someone, okay? But so though you have tried your level best, but what happens is you get a bad kick, right? So basically, this is actually the story of King Nriga. Okay, so Nriga was a very pious king. Okay, and then so he was mainly into this Papa Punya kind of thing. So he was a very pious king, and then so he used to give a lot of charity and all those things. So he was very good at giving charity and all. So what happened is he used to give hundreds of cows to Brahmanas. Okay, so what happened is one day he gave 100 cows to one Brahmana. Okay. So the Brahmana took away 100 cows. So basically, animals are very faithful, right? So what happens is they, whichever place they stay for a longer time, right? There is a tendency that they actually come back to that place, right? So what happened is out of those 100 cows, right? One cow came back. to the same herd of cows which were there in the different set of cows which are already there with the king. Okay, so where this cow was also there until yesterday. So so all 99 were, all 100 were given. So the Brahmana took them, but one came back and then say it got mixed up with the next lot. Okay. So what happens is next day the king actually gives the next 100 cows to the next Brahmana. Now the next Brahmana actually gets 100. So what happens is the Brahmana who first received the 100 cows, right? He comes back and then he says that one of my cow is missing. And then somehow he identifies that that cow is in this 100 cows lot, which the king is actually giving as a charity to the next um, next Brahmana. Okay. So now the king actually tries his level best, okay, to actually give back the cow to the Brahmana. So he said that to the Brahmana, right? So to whom he gave 100 cows today, right? He said that I'll give you, you give that cow, I'll give you 100 more cows. Okay. Then Brahmana said that nothing in that way, because at that time, so Brahmana were not greedy. He said that whatever you have given, I am satisfied, and then so it's not good for a Brahmana to actually over endeavor for anything. So I'll not take this. On the other side, the Brahmana said that you have cheated me, right? So you are doing a mockery of charity. You said you'll give 100, but you're not giving 100, and then you're actually doing charity only for the sake of name and fame. So ideally, what happened is eventually both of them cursed this king, and then this king become a lizard. Okay, so that's the entanglement. Yeah. So if we live in this world by doing these activities, right? So you see, the king never had any issues, right? So the king was such a pious person, and then he was actually giving charity. He was doing good work, right? But so, and he got entangled between these things, right? So giving and taking, and then he got hooked up, and then he had to become a lizard. So which the Lord actually delivers him. So we all know that story, right? So wherein that lizard is in the well, and then so the Lord comes into the forest with his friends, right, and relatives, and then he actually they see that there is a big lizard which is in the well, and then the Lord touches and delivers it. Yeah. So that's the entanglement which we have in this material world. So the best thing is we do actually devotional service, right? And then so we follow what is being taught to us, right? So whatever the guidance we get from our spiritual master, so we actually take it, right? So one who works in devotion, who is pure soul and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to them, right? So the in this verse, right? So if we are actually pure soul and then who controls his mind and senses, right, is very dear to everyone, right? So because he'll be very, if you look at that person also, right? So that person would be very sober, right? So what's the difference between an agitated mind and say the other person, right, who is actually always sober, right? So that's been discussed, right? So because in this case, that's the generic statement which I said, but in this case, right? So for the devotees, right? So the mind and senses are completely controlled, right? Because as I said, right? So the doership mentality is not there, right? And then say they know that everything is God's creation, right? And then we are only the servitors of the Lord, right? And in this way, his consciousness is always purified. Yeah? And then the other thing is he never looks for the result, right? So, and he acts with his body, mind, intelligence, and everything, right? So, for the higher goal, right? So, which is nothing but keeping the Lord at the center, right? So, right? So even we'll see that there will be other verses which will come in. Say he'll be like a lotus flower, right, which is untouched with the water. Yeah. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Yeah. So this is again a very advanced thing, right? So wherein so he's actually living in this material world, but all his activities are for the higher purpose. Yeah. So that's the thing. So he's utilizing all his senses for the Lord, right? And the other things as a Vyavaharika level, right? So he is using other things. Yeah. Yeah. This is one who works in devotion, a pure soul working in devotion has controlled mind senses is dear to everyone, right? So this is this we know, right? So if at all, if we'll have to feed something, right? So we'll have to identify to whom we'll have to feed, right? If it is a tree, then we'll have to root it to the water, right? So no point of watering it to the leaves or branches, right? So if at all the w- water is being given to the root, right, then the tree flourishes, right? So, and similarly, if we give the food to a hand, so will a person get energy? No, right? So that is what. So we'll we'll have to keep the Lord as the center in whatever things we do in, right? And then so we'll have to root, we'll have to water the soul to get purified, right? And so connect to the Lord, right? So we'll have to purify our senses by chanting and then so doing devotional services, right? Okay. So yeah, so these things we actually touch base, right? So mind and senses are completely controlled. So devotee is servant to all of them, right? So because his mind and senses are always fixed in Krishna consciousness. Results never what happens, right? So the results of having such actions is never entangled because work is not based on desire on the self, right? So it's not his doership, right? So it's all on Krishna's desire. So he's actually trying to satisfy the senses of Krishna, right? Of Rishikesha, not his, right? So how can Arjuna be offensive to others? He was not offensive. Soul cannot be killed. Only dress changes. Yeah? Arjuna was not fighting, but only carrying out the orders of Krishna. Right. So in this battlefield, we'll see. Even the Lord says that you'll have to become an instrument, right, in my hand. Right. So those things will come. So one who performs his duty without attachment, surrounding the results onto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful actions, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. You see. So if we perform our duty without attachment, right, and then surrendering the results to the Lord, right. So it is something like we are in midst of all these things, right, but we are untouched with them, right. So we are actually surrendered with so many activities, right? With sinful actions, but will be untouched in the material world, right? So this is how we live, right? So the self-realized soul, right? So how do they live in this material world, right? So this material world, everywhere the materialistic activities go on, right? Because they have fixed their mind and their body, words, and everything, right? So that's the reason, even though they live in this material world, right? So they are always spiritually connected. Yeah. So here, so realization is knows that everything belongs to Krishna only. Even the Lord will tell. Okay, so in the coming chapters, right, He'll says that Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, right? So everything so everything emanates from Him, right? So both spiritual and material, right? So those things we'll see in the coming chapters. Yeah, and acts without attachment with no desire of results. This we discussed. Devotees surrender results onto Supreme Lord, act according to knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna and engage in service of Krishna. Right. So this is Isha Upanishad. So this you'll read in the next level, right? So these are the Isha Upanishad mantras. Okay. So everything belongs to Krishna. Only one who knows perfectly well that he is the proprietor of everything, therefore engages everything in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of the activities, whether virtuous or sinful. Right. So this is the devotees who actually surrender. Okay. So basically they don't incur any sins. Okay. So in here also, right? So the Lord is telling Arjuna that you fight and then you'll not incur any sin because you're fighting for dharma. And then say he's fighting on the instructions of whom? Of Lord Krishna. Right? So Krishna himself is there. So there is no problem in actually doing this activity. Right? So the yogis abandoning attachment act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification, right? So all the senses should be used for purification. Yeah. The steady devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with divine, who is greedy for fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Okay, so this is what the reactions are, right? So if somebody does devotional service, right, he'll go to who does bhakti properly, right? He goes to the sloka, Goloka, Vaikuntha. And then the other way, say if you do the other way around, right? So you'll not follow all the things, right? So you don't have a regulated life, and then you do all prohibited activities, and so the chances are that in the next life you'll become a hog. Yeah. So others are greedy for the fruits of the labor, so result in entanglement. So this is what. So if we are more looking towards the fruits of the labor, then you'll have entanglement, right? So this is the story of King Riga because he was doing the puritive activities. So being such a pious king himself, right? So he has to go through all this reactions and puritive activities, right? So that's the reason. So we'll have to know what to do, right? So the story we actually discussed. So a platform of knowledge. So we should actually know. So what are the three doers? Okay, right? So basically, we'll just touch base this for 1 or 2 minutes, and then even we'll take up this in the next class also. So um, because this is an important thing, yeah. In the next class also, at the beginning, I'll actually touch base this, yeah. So who are the actually three doers? Okay, so one is the jiva, okay, and the other one is the three gunas, okay, right, and the other one is super soul, okay. So if you look in, right, so from the verse number 13 to 16, right, so the Lord actually gives the platform of knowledge, knowing the three doers, okay. So with this, right, we'll actually know how we can actually surrender, okay. So the purpose basically is to understand that we are not the doer, okay. So basically the living entity is actually residing in the city of 9 gates, okay. So we'll actually look into those 9 gates, yeah, and then say how we are actually dancing in the modes of the three gunas, right? And then who is actually sanctioning it, right? So these are the next three chapters, yeah. So here, right, when the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done, okay. So what are these 9 senses, right? So sorry, see the 9 gates, right? So the 9 gates are nothing but 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, one is the evacuation, and the other one is the genitals, right? So the soul is actually placed in the body, and then this is suffering because it is actually forgetting, right, the superior nature. The reason is due to the minute independence which the Lord has given. So due to that, right, the soul is actually suffering. And then the basic thing of the soul when it has come to the material world is to actually revive, right, and then go back to the Godhead, right. So this is like an hospital, so where we have come for a treatment, and then we should not get entangled, and then we say that we are happy in the hospital. So that's the thing, yeah. So we'll have to control everything, right? And then we'll have to regulate it, and then we'll have to go back to the Godhead. So that is through devotional service. And then if you see, right, the self. So this is situated, no, not working or causing work to be done, does not create activities, does not include others to act. So the jiva is actually dancing on the three modes. Okay. So this is the doer, material nature, second one. The embodied spirit, master of this city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the three modes of nature. Okay. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers the real knowledge. Okay. So, so living entities, right? So basically, living entities are the superior energy, but once they come in contact with the inferior energy, which is matter, right? So they get entangled into it. Okay. So, and living entity is not the master. So the living entity is only a master of his own body, right? But whereas the Lord is the master of all the bodies. Yeah. So even this we'll actually discuss. And what is the cause of suffering? Because we are attached to the temporary things. Yeah? So they are doing everything, but they are under the direction of the Lord. So whatever we do, we are doing under the direction of the modes of material nature. And then where is this thing coming up? From our desire. So we have some strong desire, right? So due to that, say the material nature awards it, and then the sanctioner is the Paramatma. So the Paramatma is there within us. Okay. So he actually sanctions it. You see, soul is the initiator, material nature is facilitator, and the Lord is sanctioner. Okay. So because if we have some strong desires, right? So for that, even though there are signals saying that you shouldn't do it, but due to our stubbornness, right? So we would like to do that. Then the Lord actually sanctions it. And the material nature facilitates it through the three modes of material nature. Yeah. Yeah. And then there is a comparison between soul and super soul, right? So we are very tiny. We are only a minute part of the eternal super soul, right? So and we are small in atomic size, whereas the super soul is Vibhu or omniscient, right? Vibhu is nothing but, say, the example you can take is we are like a gold particle, right? And the super soul is like a gold mine. So there is no comparison between our qualities and the super soul's qualities. And then we have got a minute desire, independence to desire, right? So that's the thing which is actually creates the problem. So we can have desires. If the desires are good, right? So then the super soul the super soul if all actually fulfills that. But the problem is we should actually desire for good thing. And then that desiring capability is given to us. Okay. So for example, so we get the salary, right? It is up to you how you want to utilize it, right? So, or say, for example, you have got 1000 rupees, okay, right? So it is up to you how do you want to utilize that 1000 rupees, right? So do you want to go and use it in a proper way, right? Or you want to go to a bar and then spend that money. So that particular instinct or the desire is within us, and the Lord actually sanctions it. Yeah. Okay, I think we are close to 1 hour. We'll actually stop the session today, and then we'll continue with the rest of the chapter next Saturday, next Friday, and then we'll pick chapter 6 on Sunday. Right? Okay. Probably you all have given your attendance. Yeah. Hope you all have taken Ekadashi today. So
Yes, Prabhu.
try
Yes,
try
Prabhuji.
whatsoever is possible. So how much ever time you can, you can actually take Ekadashi, right? So maybe if you are not able to resist, then you can actually eat sabudana khichdi and all, right? So in on net, if you type uh, so the recipes, right? So Ekadashi recipes, you'll get you can have them. So if you can, then best thing is you can actually drink milk and fruits, right? So even if that's not possible, so try whatsoever time duration you can be, right? So with at least try to avoid grains and right. So grains and pulses. Yeah. Okay. Anything you want to ask? Any questions related to today's topic? Okay. We'll wind up then. Thank you all for your association. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.
Could you just tell about the Bhakti Vriksha class also to everyone else? Like,
Yeah. So Hare Krishna, Prabhujis and Matajis, you can actually join the Bhakti Vriksha. Okay. So Bhakti Vriksha is nothing but so it is a group study. So wherein you all will get together because what I'm teaching is because in 2 sessions, right, we can't cover every aspect of the purport. Okay. So I actually touch base the main important things to make you understand, right? And the other thing is with if you actually get into these bhakti vrikshas, right? So you'll be actually reading them. You'll all recite the shlokas and then so that's there'll be no teacher. Okay. So it is among you only, and then say Mataji will facilitate. So wherein you'll all get into a Zoom link and then you can one Prabhuji or Mataji can read the shloka, one can actually read the purport, and then you all can discuss. And then so in that way, right, you can learn, and the other thing is you'll have an habit of reading Bhagavad Gita, right? So that is basically for that, yeah. And if there are any doubts, so you can actually because there are different perceptions, so you all can discuss. If it gets resolved, well and good. If not, you can actually ask me. Even if I am not able to answer it, so I'll get it checked with the senior devotees, and then we'll actually give an update on the query. Okay. Hare Krishna.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
Prabhuji.